$7 billion. At $53.82 a share, Scholar Rock is sitting right on top of one of the most high-stakes binary setups we've seen in the biotech sector all year. Let's get into it.
So, who exactly is Scholar Rock? Well, they're a clinical-stage biotech company, and they are completely obsessed with myostatin biology. Essentially, they go after diseases that cause severe muscle loss. But honestly, if you're looking at this stock today, you're really just looking at one thing: Apitegromab. That's their lead candidate. It's this fully human monoclonal antibody that's designed to specifically block myostatin activation in skeletal muscle. And they're developing it for children and adults dealing with spinal muscular atrophy, or SMA. Make absolutely no mistake here, guys. This single asset is the entire foundation of their commercial future. Everything, the valuation, the strategy, the whole shebang is riding on this one drug.
Now, the really fascinating part is how they're actually positioning Apitegromab. You see, SMA is a brutal disease. It starts with motor neuron loss, which then leads to debilitating muscle weakness. The traditional heavyweight SMA therapies out there, they go straight for that root genetic and motor neuron issue. But Scholar Rock, they aren't trying to pick a fight with those giants. Instead, Apitegromab is all about the muscle. It's designed to be this complementary add-on therapy that preserves or even improves muscle function on top of whatever existing treatment a patient is already taking. They're basically building a combined motor neuron plus muscle approach. And they've got the receipts to back it up. Their Phase 3 Sapphire trial showed a statistically significant and truly meaningful benefit, which is literally the bedrock of their whole scientific thesis.
Which brings us to the most important date on the calendar, September 30th, 2026. Circle it, highlight it. This is the FDA's assigned PDUFA action date, the hard deadline for the agency to make a call on their biologics license application. This right here is the ultimate make-or-break catalyst. We're talking about an incredibly tight window where Scholar Rock could literally flip a switch, going from a cash-burning clinical-stage outfit straight into a commercial-stage machine pulling in actual revenue. That kind of transition is monumental. It completely rewires how Wall Street models the company, shifting away from probability-adjusted guesses right into hard sales multiples.
But, and this is a massive but, that brings us to the core tension of this entire explainer. Look at that $7 billion market cap. The market is already baking in a huge commercial success. So the big dangerous question for investors isn't just, hey, will the FDA approve this? The real question is, how much of that eventual victory is already fully priced into that $7 billion tag? When a pre-commercial biotech carries that much weight, you're not just buying a coin toss on clinical data anymore. You are buying an expectation of absolute perfection. Wall Street is demanding approval, a flawless launch, and rapid adoption without a single speed bump.
Because expectations are literally sky high, the whole risk profile here has mutated. It's shifted away from, does the science work, to, wait, can they actually manufacture and launch this complex biologic? And this isn't just me playing devil's advocate. We've already seen regulatory headaches involving their Catalent, Indiana facility, which is run by Novo Nordisk. When you're dealing with monoclonal antibodies, the FDA doesn't just care if the drug works. They scrutinize the chemistry, the manufacturing, and the controls under a microscope. The market is hyper-aware of this, which is exactly why manufacturing has been this dark cloud hanging over the stock.
So how did Scholar Rock handle that dark cloud? Well, they got proactive. To clear up that manufacturing bottleneck, they went ahead and qualified a second fill-finish facility right here in the US. And it worked. The FDA accepted their application with both facilities on the books. Recently, the company confirmed that the FDA review is moving along with this second site in play, all while keeping that critical September 30th date intact. Guys, this is a massive de-risking event. By getting a second site online, they're no longer completely chained to one single manufacturing facility, keeping that huge September catalyst very much alive.
Now, to pull all this off, you need serious cash. And Scholar Rock has built an absolute fortress of a balance sheet for a company of its size. At the end of Q2, they were sitting on roughly $492 million in cash and marketable securities. They padded that by raising about $63 million through their ATM program just in that quarter alone. This is honestly one of their best features right now. It gives them a highly credible, well-funded runway to commercialization. They aren't staring down the barrel of a liquidity crisis, and they probably won't have to force some heavily dilutive stock offering right around approval just to keep the lights on. Oh, and they've got another $150 million in debt financing just waiting to be unlocked the second the FDA gives them the green light.
That being said, don't mistake a fat bag account for invincibility. Take a look at their burn rate. Their net loss for just the second quarter of 2026 was nearly $110 million. That pushes their first half net loss to over $215 million. They're burning cash aggressively. But to be fair, it makes sense. They're simultaneously pushing through the FDA, prepping for a massive commercial launch, expanding that critical manufacturing base, building out an entire commercial infrastructure from scratch, and funding their early pipeline. Doing all of that at the same time is wildly expensive. Building a commercial team isn't exactly a cheap weekend project, you know? They have the runway for sure, but they absolutely need Apitegromab to be a home run to justify burning this much capital.
And let's be real, hitting a home run in the commercial market is incredibly complex. Sure, the SMA market is attractive, it's a severe, rare disease with a lot of unmet need, but success requires the stars to perfectly align. You've got to find the eligible patients, win over the physicians, slog through brutal payer reimbursement negotiations, nail the pricing strategy, and prove that the drug actually works in the real world over the long haul. But you want to know the biggest hurdle? The therapies that are already out there have deep, established relationships with doctors. Scholar Rock doesn't just have to prove their drug works, they have to look a doctor in the eye and convince them to prescribe Apitegromab on top of what their patient is already taking. That is going to require a masterful, flawless commercial strategy. Now, you might hear some buzz about Scholar Rock's broader pipeline, things like their next-gen myostatin programs, SRK 181 and SRK 439. But let's ground ourselves in reality for a second. Those assets are super early stage. When you evaluate this company today, 100% of the valuation rests squarely on Apitegromab. Down the road, sure, if they want to justify growing past a $7 billion valuation, those unproven assets will definitely need to step up. But right now, if you're an investor looking at this near-term setup, you simply cannot assign real value to those early programs. Today, the story is Apitegromab, period.
All right, let's pull all this together into a scorecard to see exactly where they stand. Analytically, the marks at the top end are just stellar. The science gets a 9 out of 10. The lead asset and clinical validation are pulling an incredible 9.5 and a 9, and that's all thanks to that rock-solid Phase 3 Sapphire data. The regulatory setup and the balance sheet are holding strong. The commercial potential? Massive. But cast your eyes a bit further down. The pipeline is only sitting at a 6.5 because, like we just talked about, it's way too early. And that valuation score is a measly 6 out of 10. Why? Because the market has already priced in so much sheer optimism. That spits out a risk-reward score of 7.5, giving us an overall rating of 8 out of 10. It is a brilliant, strong setup, but it is heavily weighed down by those completely unforgiving expectations.
Because of those intense expectations, we really need to map out the scenario probabilities. If we break it down analytically, we're looking at a 50% chance for the base case, a 30% shot at the bull case, and a 20% probability for the bear case. What this distribution is screaming at us is that this is a highly asymmetric risk profile completely tethered to one single FDA decision. You know, this isn't your granddad's pharma stock where a massive portfolio smooths out the rough patches. No, this is a highly concentrated, speculative play where both the upside and the downside are going to be intensely magnified by one binary event. So, what exactly does the absolute perfect scenario look like? Well, the bull case kicks off with the FDA giving Apitegromab the green light in September 2026 with zero manufacturing drama. Right out of the gate, Scholar Rock executes a flawless launch and locks down amazing payer coverage. Doctors start snapping it up as an essential add-on therapy. Sales ramp up way faster than Wall Street models expect, and that momentum just rolls right into European markets and further label expansions. In that perfect storm of execution, honestly, today's $7 billion valuation could actually look like a bargain a few years down the line.
But we've got to respect the flip side. The bear case is grim, and it gets triggered if the FDA finds new or resurfacing manufacturing and regulatory issues. If they hand down a complete response letter or delay the application, that commercial launch hits a brick wall. And remember that massive cash burn we talked about? Yeah, that doesn't just stop. The company would just keep bleeding cash with zero revenue coming through the door. Investor confidence would evaporate overnight, triggering a sharp, brutal valuation reset. Honestly, even if they get approved, if payer uptake is sluggish, we could see a massive sell-off simply because perfection is the current baseline.
Which brings us right back to square one, leaving us with the single most important question you have to ask yourself before touching Scholar Rock. Is the commercial victory already completely priced in? Look, they've got incredible clinical data, a balance sheet built like a tank, and a massive catalyst locked in for September 30th. But at a $7 billion valuation, this play demands near absolute perfection. You aren't just betting on the science working anymore, you are betting on a flawless, zero-mistake transition from the laboratory directly to the market.